Have you ever attended an unlikely wedding and you thought to yourself, I don't give them very long? However badly that marriage started out, I guarantee you it did not start as poorly as the wedding in High Noon. High Noon is the 33rd best film of all time, according to the American Film Institute. It was released in 1952 and stars Gary Cooper and Grace Kelly. High Noon is the self-proclaimed favorite movie of several United States presidents, including Eisenhower, Reagan, and Bill Clinton, who screened it 17 times at the White House during his administration.
The first movie I ever saw more than once was High Noon.
This movie is legendary, and the life it carried on past the screen is just as interesting as the movie itself. Despite not being in it, John Wayne accepted an Oscar for it. Despite hating the movie, he called it the most un-American thing he's ever seen. In a moment, I'll explain how this movie helped to vote out the communist power in a European country some 37 years later. We'll come back to that, but first let's talk about the movie itself. High Noon is a 1952 Western film directed by Fred Zinman that stars Gary Cooper and Grace Kelly. The story unfolds in real time and is centered on Marshal Will Kane, who has just married Amy Fowler and plans to retire from law enforcement. However, his plans are disrupted when he learns that Frank Miller, a vengeful outlaw Kane once put behind bars, is coming to town on the noon train with his gang to exact revenge. Despite his efforts to enlist the help of the townspeople, Kane finds himself alone, as the citizens he has protected for years refuse to stand by him out of either fear or apathy. His new wife, a Quaker pacifist, urges him to leave with her, but Kane's sense of duty compels him to stay and face Miller in the climactic end scene. High Noon is celebrated for its intense, minimalist storytelling and its exploration of themes such as duty, courage, and the moral complexities of standing up for what is right, even if you're doing so alone. This is many of the reasons why it's a favorite among American presidents and the would-be president of a certain country in Europe some 37 years later. High Noon broke the mold that many other westerns have fallen into in several ways. For example, traditional westerns up to this point heavily rely on extended gunfights and bar brawls, while High Noon is much more restrained, mainly building suspense through dialogue, character interactions, and its use of the clock. By use of the clock, I'm referring to how the movie unfolds almost in real time, leading up to the arrival of the noon train that brings the villain to his final showdown with Sheriff Kane. This real-time narrative is opposite of many of the westerns leading up to High Noon that were usually more episodic. Additionally, High Noon features several strong female characters, a rarity in westerns at that time.
What kind of woman are you? How can you leave him like this? Does the sound of guns frighten you that much?
I don't care who's right or who's wrong. There's got to be some better way for people to live.
Also, much of the town, pretty much everyone in the town, displays cowardice and lack of community, contrasting with the typical good versus evil Western where the entire town rallies behind the sheriff on the side of good to fight the evil gang. The final example I'll give is how Marshal Kane, the movie's protagonist, is not portrayed as the confident, macho hero found in most other Westerns. Instead, he shows fear, uncertainty, and vulnerability, which makes his stand against Miller even more compelling. This internal struggle is a significant departure from other Westerns, focusing on action and adventure. Now, some interesting facts before we discuss why John Wayne hated this movie. Shelby Woolley, who plays Frank Miller's brother Ben, is the actor behind the famous Wilhelm scream, originally from the movie Distant Drums, that has been used in nearly 400 other movies. The script for High Noon was written with John Wayne in mind, who declined the film. More on that later. Gregory Peck, Marlon Brando, and Montgomery Clift all were offered the part as well, but declined for various reasons. The film's theme song, Do Not Forsake Me, Oh My Darling, sung by Tex Ritter, played a significant role in the film's success. In fact, this was one of the first instances where a film's theme song was used to promote the movie extensively, and it became a hit in its own right. Gary Cooper approached his role as Sheriff Kane as a method actor. He meticulously prepared for his role as a fearful, emotionally distraught man by shooting the film while going through a very public separation from his wife, while also dealing with intense suffering from bleeding ulcers and recent surgery on his back. It's like he was the Richard Simmons of emotional distress, sweating it out for the sake of authenticity. It worked rather well as he won an Oscar for his performance. However, he was working in Europe during the award ceremony and asked his good friend John Wayne to accept the award on his behalf.
In the absence of the winner, John Wayne will accept the award for Gary Cooper.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to see that they're giving this to a man who is not only most deserving, but has conducted himself throughout his years in our business in a manner that we can all be proud of him.
John Wayne had declined the part of Sheriff Kane as he felt the film was an allegory for standing up against the Hollywood blacklist and McCarthyism, which Wayne was in support of at the time. It didn't help that the screenplay was written by Carl Foreman, a former member of the American Communist Party who was blacklisted during the Red Scare. In a later interview, John Wayne said that High Noon was the most un-American thing I've ever seen in my whole life. He hated how the common folk were portrayed as cowards and didn't like to see the sheriff portrayed as fearful.
A whole city of people that have come across the plains and suffered all kinds of hardships are suddenly afraid to help out a sheriff because 3 men are coming into town that are tough.
6 years later, he made the movie Rio Bravo in direct response to the movie High Noon. And the film's plot in Rio Bravo is very similar to High Noon. However, John Wayne's character never shows fear. Let's fast forward to Poland in 1989. The first free elections are taking place, and the group Solidarity is really the first true opposition to the entrenched Communist Party. A young artist named Thomas Zamek took the famous High Noon poster of Gary Cooper's character walking down the street and replaced his gun with a ballot. The pro-Solidarity poster was seen all over Poland, and the message that you see on the poster translates to Elections, High Noon, June 4th, 1989. Thomas chose the poster to portray Lech Walesa as the lonely good man to vote for against the communists. Lech Walesa went on to win the election by a wide margin, becoming the first freely voted Polish leader since 1926. Isn't it ironic that an American Western that was written by a former communist, years later, was integral in voting out the Communist Party in Poland? So is the 33rd best movie of all time worth the watch? It was interesting to watch characters who are usually filled with bravado and decisive action instead show fear and uncertainty. While John Wayne saw it as un-American, I saw a realistic human response to a difficult situation. Fear and uncertainty are far more common than confidence and bravery. Watching a man overcome his own fears without the help of those he held closest to him was compelling and captivating to watch. My wife and I both really enjoyed this movie. However, if you are in the mood for a traditional Western, this might not be the film for you, but I highly recommend you giving it a shot. The last Top 100 movie we watched was about surgeons, sex, and soldiers. The next Top 100 film we watch has the best, worst ending to a movie I've ever seen in my life. That doesn't make sense unless you've seen it. I can't give too much away, or it would be a big spoiler. Let me give you a riddle as a hint. Cut nose, truth maligned, and mystery entwined. If you think you can solve that riddle, put your answer in the comments below. I'm interested to see if anyone can guess what the movie is. Thank you for watching.
Look at the time. High noon.